This is William K. Murtaugh, Mert Witness 1, and today I am going to discuss lawsuits and trial watchers. Kind of an interesting mix here, but there's a commonality in these two subjects that I will hope to make apparent as I go on with this monologue. Now, in my Saturday night live stream, I was pleasantly surprised to have Chad Cater call in to discuss the threatened lawsuit against him by Randy Q. Erickson. And some of the points that were brought up in that conversation were quite interesting. First of all, it has been known for some time that Randy Q. Erickson is involved in the sovereign citizen movement. And the sovereign citizens have some rather specific beliefs when it comes to the current court system. If anybody has tried to get through one of Kurt Pendergrass's webcasts, might have heard what their thoughts are concerning the U.S. court system. In short, they believe the court system is illegitimate. And I find it rather interesting that if they find the court system illegitimate, why on earth are they suing somebody to begin with? Because they say that the Minnesota court system in particular is corrupt. They use Timothy Homseth as a prime example of that. And yet, it's the same Minnesota court system that would hear any civil action against Chad Cater or anyone else in the state of Minnesota. So it's a little bit hypocritical. And it kind of shows that when the rubber meets the road, they're going to turn to the corrupt legal system in order to argue their case. And they argue that, well, we're going to use white hat attorneys that are part of the system but that are on our side. And that's kind of a lame excuse to get out of the fact that they know full well that the sovereign citizen movement is a farce at the very minimum. That you're either a citizen or you're not a citizen. When you become a sovereign citizen, you're renouncing yourself as a citizen of the United States because you don't recognize it. So it's rather confusing, but it's one of those things. Now, about the farthest the lawsuit has gotten at this point that I'm aware of is that a letter of intent was sent to the attorney that Randy Erickson is alleged to be retaining for this lawsuit, and a copy of that was forwarded to Chad Cater, the prospective defendant in this case. Also, apparently there was an order by Randy Erickson that Chad Cater cease and desist any communication not only with Randy Erickson but with Timothy Charles Homseth. Now, what's strange about this is precisely the same kind of order that was given by Kim Picazio against Timothy Homseth. There was no communication, no discussion, nothing. And Timothy Homseth defied that order. Now, Randy Erickson, among others, have argued that Timothy Holmseth has the right to defy that order. So if Timothy Charles Holmseth has the right to defy the restraining order put upon him by Kim Picasio, why would the same thing apply in Randy Erickson's case? There's a freedom of speech issue here. According to Tim Holmseth, that he has the right to confront Kim Picasio with his nonsense and his theories, and he shouldn't be convicted of any action where he defied that particular order. And on this side, we have Randy Erickson doing precisely the same thing. So it's a convenience to argue a point on one side and then go against that point on the other. They're doing it in both the lawsuit and the restraining orders that have been given out. You know, the status of a restraining order is dependent on who it is the order's restrained against and who's doing the restraining. Kind of funny how that works out. Tim Holmseth filed a lawsuit to restrain the freedom of speech of me and Kim Picasio, and yet he wants the same freedom of speech to go around and accuse people of things they did not say or did not do or are not a part of. He can go around and convict people without a trial of being part of satanic ritual cults, of kidnapping and selling babies, giving these babies over to satanic groups that eat the babies and drink their blood and that sort of thing. You know, people don't have the right to defend themselves against that because he's part of this pedophile task force and he can say whatever he damn well please. Well, the problem is in the real world it doesn't work that way. You know, until Pendergrass and Erickson and all these other people are able to convert over to this new system, they have to work within the current system. And it's going to be that way for years to come if we ever go to their system. You know, they're just going to have to live with their so-called kangaroo courts. They have no choice. You know, all these little pieces of paper they write to the courts aren't going to do any good. And so we have these two lawsuits to work with here. And another thing I don't think that Randy Erickson has quite worked into the equation is the fact that this lawsuit is going to be incredibly expensive. It's going to could run into the tens of thousands of dollars, you know, a minimum of $10,000 up front because of what's involved. You've got, not only do you have to retain the attorney, but there's fees that you're going to pay on top of that. All the court fees, cost of discovery, all that stuff is going to be borne by the plaintiff. Now, you may hope you're going to get recovery, but if the person you're suing doesn't have the assets in which to pay off your judgment, if you happen to prevail, which is unlikely in this case, then you got the problem of getting paid. And that's, you know, it's just not a simple process to take someone into court. So, another thing that Randy should understand if she had watched the Holmseth affair is these trials can be fairly long. It took quite a long time for Holmseth's trial to commence and then be summarily shut down, and that was only in the early stages of the process, the beginning of the process. There was a long way to go to get it into court, and if you look at the timetable on that, it took a long time to even get the thing off the ground. It would have been a multi-year process had the lawsuit gone forward. And Randy Erickson faces the same problem. It's going to be a long time from the time the lawsuit is actually commenced until there's an outcome. And it could be 2 or 3 years. Now, the process here will be a long, arduous, and expensive one. So I hope Randy is prepared for it, that she's prepared for the adverse publicity she's going to get in the meantime, because people are going to discuss this case. I cover trials, and this is a trial, so I'll be covering it. And that's just tough on her part because I'm not part of the action. I'm not associated directly with anyone that would be a party to this potential lawsuit. All I'm doing is reporting current events. So as we move forward with this case, I'll be covering it as best I can from out of state. I'll do the usual formalities as far as obtaining court materials, and I'll cover it depending on how things go. Now we turn to a rather interesting subject that ties into all this, and this is the court watchers. Now, Timothy Holmseth went on a bit of a rant about people that go to court and watch cases. And this is in direct response to Chad Cater and other individuals who were directly involved in the way things were going in East Grand Forks, Minnesota, and Crookston, Minnesota, before the Great Escape. Timothy Holmseth used to have a number of friends who supported him even through some of his early days of advocating these wild theories. The only problem is, as time went on, the theories began to get just a little bit too wild, and people were beginning to have second thoughts. And then came the Great Escape. Now, Chad Cater had been going to all the trials and supporting Tim Holmseth. He allowed himself to become a power of attorney. He allowed himself to get involved with receiving Tim's mail. At some point, he had even stored Tim's belongings, and so forth. Then, when the Great Escape happened, Tim picked up all his belongings and bugged out. Not sure the exact timetable. At some point, Tim had gotten all his belongings and was off to parts unknown. And Tim accused Chad Cater, of having something to do with Kim Picasio finding out his location, which didn't happen because of, as I have stated a number of times prior, if law enforcement had known for certain where Tim Holmseth was, they would have got him. So that fact alone blows this whole argument out of the water. You know, there was speculation that Holmseth could be here or might be here, but it wasn't an absolute. And if anybody had given away where Tim Holmseth was, it was Tim Holmseth. He did it in his webcast. He did it in entries that he had made immediately after his great escape, and continues to do so. So this saying that there's some big disclosure because of Chad Cater or anyone else is a big lie. Now this gets into this point because Chad Cater and others had gone to court and watched the trial and tried to come to the aid of Tim Holmseth through the various stages. And now that Chad Cater has had this great epiphany along with other people and realized that Tim Holmseth has gone down an extremely dark and unusual path, they've said they've had enough, and they tried to walk away from it. They said, look, I didn't disclose Holmseth's location. I disagree vehemently with what the people are doing to him. They're doing him a lot of harm. I have no animosity towards Tim, and I want to help him, but these people get in the way, and they fill Tim's head full of nonsense, and they, in my opinion, have brainwashed Tim Holmseth. Tim Holmseth is not going to allow anyone to come in from the outside and convince him that he needs to change the way he does things. He is basically in this to the bitter end, and it will be a bitter end. Because, fate is going to catch up to him. It's just a matter of time. It could be within a few days, or it may be within a few months, but eventually, reality and fate is going to catch up to Tim Holmseth. Because you cannot have this kind of thing going on where you're pretending to be an agent of the United States government, and that's exactly what Tim Holmseth is presenting himself as, and seek donations from people or accept donations from people based on that claim. It's against the law. It's a felony. And eventually it's going to catch up to him. The law is going to say, we've allowed this to go on long enough, and it's just gotten to the point where we got to put our foot down and say, look, you are not a government agent. The Pentagon Pedophile Task Force does not exist. You're committing consumer fraud. You're seeking funds from people. You're seeking information from people based on your claim that you're an agent of the United States government. You can't do that. And he's going to go to jail. He's going to go to jail for a very, very long time. And it's going to go through this very court system that nobody likes. But it's going to happen. Because there's nothing Kirk Pendergrass can do about it, there's nothing Chris Hallett can do about it, and there's nothing Randy Erickson can do about it. Now, she can go around suing people, or trying to sue people, but the end result is that Timothy Charles Holmseth, plus anyone that is associated with the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force and the Children's Crusade, are going to go to jail. Because what they're doing is against the law. Hiding under this noble effort of claiming to be saving children and wanting to save children is not going to cut it. Now, perhaps if this group had not declared themselves part of the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force, they could have kept on with this farce indefinitely. There are tens of thousands of groups, restart. There are tens of thousands of groups out there right now doing the same thing. They're declaring that they're out to save children or other similar causes and raising money. People began to realize that Tim Holmseth will turn on those who supported him if they start to disagree with him and attempt to steer him down the right path. He will accuse them of all these disgusting things right along with everybody else. It's something that I have tried to get people to understand for years, that if you disagree with Tim Holmseth, try to steer him away from these outlandish theories that he has, not only will he lash out against you, but you will become part of the conspiracy. You will be part of this group of pedophiles and so forth. And so now we have Tim Holmseth accusing court watchers of being part of this vast conspiracy, and Tim Holmseth is warning people about court watchers. That means anyone, doesn't matter who, that decides that they want to sit in on a trial is considered suspect, and that you have to do an FBI background check on anybody that may sit in on your court case to make sure that they're not there to do whatever Tim Holmseth accuses them of doing to influence the outcome of the trial. And I find it very peculiar that Tim Holmseth will go down this path, because Tim Holmseth has been trying to get into court. He wants all this evidence out there for people to see, for people to believe what he believes in, and yet the very way he could do it, he avoids. Now, Tim Holmseth could have gone to court in Minnesota and put all his arguments into the record. He's done it before. He could do it again and again and again and put new layers of information on top of his own information. But instead of doing that, he just takes off. And in the process, he leaves Phil McConnell holding the bag. And they're basically using Phil McConnell as a martyr, saying, well, now that Phil McConnell is in prison, he's in prison because he tried to help Timothy Holmseth and blah, blah, blah. But Tim Holmseth isn't suffering. Tim Holmseth is rather comfortable right now. And he's not out in the cold of Minnesota, Wisconsin weather. He's in a nice warm house. He has a big comfortable couch to sit on. And it's a reclining couch. Has a nice big TV to watch. He's got free internet, free food, free showers, a free bed to sleep in, probably a free maid. Tim, is he washing his clothes? Is he taking a bath? Is he taking care of himself? Somebody's got to be there babysitting him. And I can guarantee you that's exactly what's going on. There is somebody controlling him. And making sure that he stays on the narrative. But right now, Tim Holmseth is an asset. He's garnering an income. People are sending money to his cause. And these people are reaping the financial benefits of it. And yes, this is about money. It's not about saving children. It's not about any lofty cause. It is about money. And these people can argue until they're blue in the face, but when you got Patreon accounts and GoFundMe and PayPal accounts out there and giving all kinds of excuses as to why they need this money, then it is about money. And it's also about fame and attention, because that's something that Tim Holmseth thrives upon. And right now, that's what's keeping him in this group, is he loves the fame, He'll do anything to keep it. And so he follows their position that, hey, you're going to be famous if you just follow our instructions, do what we tell you to do. We will feed you, we will house you, we will provide you with a car if you want to go out and do a remote broadcast from a shopping center. But as long as you toe the mark and support us, we will support you. And so he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. And he's stuck having to say that you got to beware of the court watchers. That the court watchers are evil. That they're out to get you. They're going to trap you. They're going to turn people against you. Rather than just sit there and watch and cover these trials. Because in the end, I kind of wonder if he's warning people about my upcoming coverage of various trials. I've been a trial watcher for years. But we'll wait and see on that one. But right now, he seems to be concentrating on people in the state of Minnesota. Making accusations against people in Minnesota. And I offer this as a suggestion and a warning to all those that's on the fringes that support Tim Homseth. More and more people are starting to question Tim Homseth's claims. They're questioning the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force. They're questioning all kinds of things. And one by one, these people are saying that they've had enough. And I would suggest at this point, the best way to get away from Tim is not to sit there and argue with him and try and declare your lack of support, but to simply walk away. Don't say a word. Don't send money, don't comment, don't get on Facebook or Twitter or the various social media accounts and call them out. Just ignore them. And the support will dwindle. As the money dries up and the people around Tim Homseth see that he's not going to be a piggy bank anymore, they'll abandon him. They'll say, well, he's doing us a lot of harm. Our coffers are getting low. We got to go and find something else to argue about. And they'll move on to sovereign citizen stuff, the stuff that more people believe in. And Tim will fade away. And he may wander back into Minnesota where he will be apprehended and have to stand trial. But that's really the way out of this. Is don't be a loud voice when you finally abandon Tim Homseth and those around him. Just leave. Unfollow, unfriend, block, do it all. Just walk away. Because the one thing you find that if you get into a pissing match with Tim Homseth, you'll be labeled a pedophile, you'll be labeled a devil, all these things, and you'll become a court watcher. An evil court watcher, a court watcher that's out to get Tim in jail. So, that's basically all I can come up with for you. It may not work, but it's a solution. Because Tim actually thrives on confrontation. He thrives on people coming after him because then he can use it as an excuse for him being a victim. He's never wrong. Tim doesn't make mistakes. That's his claim to fame. He does not make mistakes. He's perfect. You'd almost think he was God. And the people around him prop him up as a god. He may deny it, but when you look close at how Tim operates, you have to wonder. You just have to wonder. And so with that, I'm going to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And I'll find something else to talk about tomorrow. But in the meantime, this is William K. Murtaugh, Mert Witness 1. Have a good one.